Unconsciousness is a way of teleporting to the future. You may die on the journey, but this fact can only serve to recommend the experience. The darkness is deaf. We can speak, but we are not heard. We can scream, but they turn their backs. We can run, but we cannot catch them. It is the dream where arms and legs won't work the way they should, and the air is too thick to breathe. Loved ones walk a mile ahead, forgetting to stop as we fall behind. This is the reality of the darkness. We are buried alive inside ourselves. According to convention, there is a sweet and a bitter, a hot and a cold, and according to convention, there is an order. In truth, there are atoms and a void. If there were a man who dared to say all that he thought of this world, there would not be a square foot of ground left for him to stand on. When a man appears, the world bears down on him and breaks his back. There are always too many rotten pillars left standing, too much festering humanity for man to bloom. The superstructure is a lie and the foundation is a huge quaking fear. If at intervals of centuries there does appear a man with a desperate, hungry look in his eye, a man who would turn the world upside down in order to create a new race, the love that he brings to the world is turned to bile and he becomes a scourge. People don't get what they deserve. They just get what they get, and there's nothing any of us can do about it. Our bodies break down, sometimes when we're 90, sometimes before we're even born, but it always happens and there's never any dignity in it. I don't care if you can walk, see, wipe your own ass. It's always ugly. Always. You can live with dignity. We can't die with it. And the past held only this wisdom, that love was a damaging mistake, and its accomplice, hope, a treacherous illusion. And whenever those twin poisonous flowers began to sprout in the parched land of that field, Miriam uprooted them. She uprooted them and ditched them before they took hold. What is this world to me, even if I can have it? Now the standard cure for one who is sunk is to consider those in actual destitution or physical suffering. This is an all-weather beatitude for gloom in general and fairly salutary daytime advice for everyone. But at 3 o'clock in the morning, a forgotten package has the same tragic importance as a death sentence, and the cure doesn't work, and in a real dark night of the soul it is always 3 o'clock in the morning, day after day. He hit the steering wheel weakly, the car honking as he cried. He leaned his head back, looking up. I hate myself, I hate myself, I hate this, I hate this, I disgust myself, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, just let me fucking die. I felt shame. I see this clearly, now, at the instinctive recognition in myself of an awful enfeebling fatalism, a sense that the great outcomes were but randomly connected to our endeavors, that life was beyond mending, that love was lost, that nothing worth saying was sayable, that dullness was general, that disintegration was irresistible. From the beginning, through the middle years and up to the end, too bad, too bad, too bad. He ran his fingers over the moist ends of her hair and across her face. Her eyes were wet. Jesus Christ. How many nights had he heard Lily crying? As some parents sleep through fire, thunderstorms, and voices at the back door only to wake at a child's whisper, so Everett heard Lily crying at night. Her muffled sobs seemed to have broken his dreams for years. He had heard her even at Fort Lewis, even in Georgia, finally at Bliss. That was Lily crying in the wings whenever the priest came to tear up his mother's grave. Lily cried in the twilight field where he picked wild poppies with Martha. Lily's was the cry he heard those nights the kill burned, the levee broke, the ranch went to nothing. We are the hollow men. We are the stuffed men. Leaning together, headpiece filled with straw. Alas, our dry voices, when we whisper together, are quiet and meaningless, as wind in dry grass, or rats feet over broken glass. In our dry cellar, I'd like to think that the day I realize we will always be miserable will differ from every other. I hope it will so obnoxiously stand out from the monotonous cycle of my days that I wouldn't forget that sorrowful moment of comprehension. But when that breeze of reality comes by, it won't be a memorable hurricane, nor a momentous tornado. It will be the same sad, soft wind that I felt the day before, and the day before that. Because the moment you understand your inevitable misery in life, may also be the day you see you are to always be dejected. Posterity will never hear of you. You will be lifted clean out from the stream of history. We shall turn you into gas and pour you into the stratosphere. Nothing will remain of you, not a name in a register, not a memory in a living brain. You will be annihilated in the past as well as in the future. You will never have existed. It was like this blackness that crept into the corners of my life until everything was gray and dirty. My insides felt burned out, like if you cut me open, all you would find would be smoke. No heart, no bones. There was nothing left, just the anger. It followed me everywhere. It sat on my bed and watched me sleep, and when I had to eat, it looked at me across the table. When you have lost hope, you have lost everything. And when you think all is lost, when all is dire and bleak, you are right. There is an idea of a me, some kind of abstraction, but there is no real me, only an entity, something illusory. And though I can hide my cold gaze and you can shake my hand and feel flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can even sense our lifestyles are probably comparable, I simply am not there. It is hard for me to make sense on any given level. Myself is fabricated, an aberration. I am a non-contingent human being. My personality is sketchy and unformed. My heartlessness goes deep and is persistent. My conscience, my pity, my hopes disappeared a long time ago if they ever did exist. There are no more barriers to cross. All I have in common with the uncontrollable and the insane, the vicious and the evil, all the mayhem I have caused and my utter indifference toward it, I have now surpassed. I still, though, hold on to one single bleak truth: no one is safe, nothing is redeemed. Yet I am blameless. Each model of human behavior must be assumed to have some validity. Is evil something you are? Or is it something you do? My pain is constant and sharp, and I do not hope for a better world for anyone. In fact, I want my pain to be inflicted on others. I want no one to escape. But even after admitting this, and I have countless times, in just about every act I've committed and coming face to face with these truths, there is no catharsis. I gain no deeper knowledge about myself. No new understanding can be extracted from my telling. There has been no reason for me to tell you any of this. This confession has meant nothing. I am almost 100 years old, waiting for the end, and thinking about the beginning. There are things I need to tell you, but would you listen if I told you how quickly time passes? I know you are unable to imagine this. Nevertheless, I can tell you that you will awake someday to find that your life has rushed by at a speed at once impossible and cruel. The most intense moments will seem to have occurred only yesterday, and nothing will have erased the pain and pleasure, the impossible intensity of love and its dog-leaping happiness, the blackness of passions unrequited, or unexpressed, or unresolved. And for just a moment I had reached the point of ecstasy that I always wanted to reach, which was the complete step across chronological time into timeless shadows, and wonderment in the bleakness of the mortal realm, and the sensation of death kicking at my heels to move on, with a phantom dogging its own heels, and myself hurrying to a plank where all the angels dug off and flew into the holy void of uncreated emptiness, the potent and inconceivable radiancies shining in bright mind essence. Innumerable lotus lands falling open in the magic moth swarm of heaven. I could hear an indescribable seething roar which wasn't in my ear but everywhere and had nothing to do with sounds. I realized that I had died and been reborn numberless times, but just didn't remember, especially because the transitions from life to death and back to life are so ghostly easy, a magical action for naught, like falling asleep and waking up again a million times, the utter casualness and deep ignorance of it. I realized it was only because of the stability of the intrinsic mind that these ripples of birth and death took place, like the action of the wind on a sheet of pure, serene, mirror-like water. I felt sweet, swinging bliss, like a big shot of heroin in the mainline vein, like a gulp of wine late in the afternoon, and it makes you shudder. My feet tingle. I thought I was going to die the very next moment. And I did. And I am bored to death with it. Bored to death with this place. Bored to death with my life. Bored to death with myself. Life is bloodless, pulseless, and yet present enough to allow a suffocating horror and pain. All bearings are lost. All things are dark and drained of feeling. The slippage into futility is first gradual, then utter. Thought, which is as pervasively affected by depression as mood, is morbid, confused, and stuporous. It is also vacillating, ruminative, indecisive, and self-castigating. The body is bone weary. There is no will. Nothing is that is not an effort, and nothing at all seems worth it. Sleep is fragmented, elusive, or all-consuming. Like an unstable gas, an irritable exhaustion seeps into every crevice of thought and action. It was much better to imagine men in some smoky room somewhere, made mad and cynical by privilege and power, plotting over brandy. You had to cling to this sort of image, because if you didn't, then you might have to face the fact that bad things happened because ordinary people, the kind who brushed the dog and told the children bedtime stories, were capable of then going out and doing horrible things to other ordinary people. It was so much easier to blame it on them. It was bleakly depressing to think that they were us. If it was them, then nothing was anyone's fault. If it was us, then what did that make me? After all, I'm one of us. I must be. I've certainly never thought of myself as one of them. No one ever thinks of themselves as one of them. We're always one of us. It's them that do the bad things. The person in whom its invisible agony reaches a certain unendurable level will kill himself the same way a trapped person will eventually jump from the window of a burning high-rise. Make no mistake about people who leap from burning windows. Their terror of falling from a great height is still just as great as it would be for you or me standing speculatively at the same window just checking out the view, i.e. the fear of falling remains a constant. The variable here is the other terror, the fire's flames. When the flames get close enough, falling to death becomes the slightly less terrible of two terrors. It's not desiring the fall, it's terror of the flames. And yet nobody down on the sidewalk, looking up and yelling "don't" and "hang on," can understand the jump. Not really. You'd have to have personally been trapped and felt flames to really understand a terror way beyond falling. The sound in the dark is a monster, and it really is as bad as you think. I don't want to see anyone. I lie in the bedroom with the curtains drawn and nothingness washing over me like a sluggish wave. Whatever is happening to me is my own fault. I have done something wrong, something so huge I can't even see it, something that's drowning me. I am inadequate and stupid, without word. I might as well be dead. And I felt like my heart had been so thoroughly and irreparably broken that there could be no real joy again, that at best there might eventually be a little contentment. Everyone wanted me to get help and rejoin life, pick up the pieces and move on, and I tried to, I wanted to, but I just had to lie in the mud with my arms wrapped around myself, eyes closed, grieving, until I didn't have to anymore. He opened his mouth. The words were there. He was about to say them when a jolt of terror went through him, the terror of someone who, wandering in a mist, pauses only to realize that they have stopped inches from the edge of a gaping abyss. The way she was looking at him, she could read what was in his eyes, he realized. It must have been written plainly there, like words on the page of a book. There had been no time, no chance, to hide it. William, she whispered. Say something, William. But there was nothing to say. There was only emptiness, as there had been before her, as there would always be. I have lost everything, Will thought. Everything. I stare into a thin, wet light crack above the urinal's handle and think to myself that if I were to disappear into that crack, say somehow miniaturize and slip into it, the odds are good that no one would notice I was gone. No one would care. In fact, some, if they noticed my absence, might feel an odd, indefinable sense of relief. This is true. The world is better off with some people gone. Our lives are not all interconnected. That theory is crock. Some people truly do not need to be here. The seals stupidly dive off rocks into swirling black water, barking mindlessly. The zookeepers feed them dead fish. A crowd gathers around the tank, mostly adults, a few accompanied by children. On the seal's tank of black horns, coins can kill if swallowed. Coins can lodge in an animal's stomach and cause ulcers, infections, and death. Do not throw coins in the pool. So what do I do? Toss a handful of change into the tank when none of the zookeepers are watching. It's not the seals I hate, it's the audience's enjoyment of them that bothers me. Because I don't care what anyone says or how often or winningly they say it, no one will ever be able to persuade me that life is some awesome, rewarding treat. Because, here's the truth, life is a catastrophe. The basic fact of existence of walking around trying to feed ourselves and find friends and whatever else we do is a catastrophe. Forget all this ridiculous our-town nonsense everyone talks, the miracle of a newborn baby, the joy of one simple blossom, life you are too wonderful to grasp and see. for me, and I'll keep repeating it doggedly till I die, till I fall over on my ungrateful nihilistic face and am too weak to say it. Better never born than born into the cesspool. Sinkhole of hospital beds, coffins, and broken hearts. No release, no appeal, no do-overs, no way forward but age and loss, and no way out but death. His hatred for all was so intense that it should extinguish the very love from which it was conceived. And thus, he ceased to feel. There was nothing further in which to believe that made the prospect of feeling worthwhile. Daily he woke up and cast downtrodden eyes upon the sea, and he would say to himself with a hint of regret at his hitherto lack of indifference, all a dim illusion, was it? Surely it was foolish of me to think any of this had meaning. He would then spend hours staring at the sky, wondering how best to pass the time if everything, even the sky itself, were naught. He arrived at the conclusion that there was no best way to pass the time. The only way to deal with the illusion of time was to endure it, knowing full well, all the while, that one was truly enduring nothing at all. If we exterminate ourselves as a species, and vaporize our beautiful world, the universe will not cry with us. No gods will intervene. It will just happen, and then the universe will go on. We will not be remembered. We will simply not be. Pity preserves things that are ripe for decline. It defends things that have been disowned and condemned by life. And it gives a depressive and questionable character to life itself by keeping alive an abundance of failures of every type. People have dared to call pity a virtue. People have gone even further, making it into the virtue, the foundation and source of all virtues. But of course you always have to keep in mind that this was the perspective of a philosophy that inscribed the negation of life on its shield. Pity negates life. It makes life worthy of negation. Pity is the practice of nihilism. This depressive and contagious instinct runs counter to the instincts that preserve and enhance the value of life, by multiplying misery just as much as by conserving everything miserable. Pity is one of the main tools used to increase decadence. Pity wins people over to nothingness. You do not say nothingness. Instead you say the beyond, or God, or the true life, or nirvana, salvation, blessedness. This innocent rhetoric from the realm of religious moral idiosyncrasy suddenly appears much less innocent when you see precisely which tendencies are wrapped up inside these sublime words, tendencies hostile to life. The world owes you nothing. Once on a yellow piece of paper with green lines, he wrote a poem, and he called it Chops, because that was the name of his dog, and that's what it was all about. And his teacher gave him an egg, and a gold star, and his mother hung it on the kitchen door, and read it to his aunts. That was the year Father Tracy took all the kids to the zoo. and he let them sing on the bus. And his little sister was born, with tiny toenails and no hair. And his mother and father kissed a lot. And the girl around the corner sent him a Valentine signed with a row of X's. And he had to ask his father what the X's meant. And his father always tucked him in bed at night, and was always there to do it. Once on a piece of white paper with blue lines, he wrote a poem, and he called it Autumn, because that was the name of the season, and that's what it was all about. And his teacher gave him an A, and asked him to write more clearly. And his mother never hung it on the kitchen door, because of its new paint. And the kids told him that Father Tracy smoked cigars, and left buds on the pews, and sometimes they would burn holes. That was the year his sister got glasses, with thick lenses and black frames. And the girl around the corner laughed when he asked her to go see Santa Claus. And the kids told him why. His mother and father kissed a lot, and his father never tucked him in bed at night. And his father got mad when he cried for him to do it. Once on a paper torn from his notebook, he wrote a poem, and he called it Innocence, a question, because that was the question about his girl, and that's what it was all about. And his professor gave him an A, and a strange steady look. And his mother never hung it on the kitchen door, because he never showed her. That was the year that Father Tracy died. And he forgot how the end of the Apostles' Creed went. And he caught his sister making out on the back porch, and his mother and father never kissed, or even talked. And the girl around the corner wore too much makeup that made him cough when he kissed her, but he kissed her anyway, because that was the thing to do. And at 3 a.m. he tucked himself into bed, his father snoring soundly. That's why on the back of a brown paper bag, he tried another poem, and he called it Absolutely Nothing, because that's what it was really all about. And he gave himself an A, and a slash on each damp wrist, and he hung it on the bathroom door, because this time he didn't think he could reach the kitchen. What is an instant death anyway? How long is an instant? Is it 1 second? 10? The pain of those seconds must have been awful as her heart burst and her lungs collapsed and there was no air and no blood to her brain and only raw panic. What the hell is instant? Nothing is instant. Instant rice takes 5 minutes, instant pudding an hour. I doubt that an instant of blinding pain feels particularly instantaneous. We're all going to die, all of us, What a circus. That alone should make us love each other, but it doesn't. We are terrorized and flattened by trivialities. We are eaten up by nothing. Much of my life had been devoted to trying not to cry in front of people who loved me, so I knew what he was doing. You clench your teeth. You look up. You tell yourself that if they see you cry, it will hurt them, and you will be nothing but a sadness in their lives, and you must not become a mere sadness, so you will not cry, and you say all of this to yourself while looking up at the ceiling, and then you swallow even though your throat does not want to close, and you look at the person who loves you and smile. He awoke each morning with the desire to do right, to be a good and meaningful person, to be, as simple as it sounded and as impossible as it actually was, happy. And during the course of each day his heart would descend from his chest into his stomach. By early afternoon he was overcome by the feeling that nothing was right, or nothing was right for him, and by the desire to be alone. By evening he was fulfilled, alone in the magnitude of his grief, alone in his aimless guilt, alone even in his loneliness. I am not sad, he would repeat to himself over and over. I am not sad. As if he might one day convince himself, or fool himself, or convince others the only thing worse than being sad is for others to know that you are sad. I am not sad. I am not sad, because his life had unlimited potential for happiness, insofar as it was an empty white room. He would fall asleep with his heart at the foot of his bed, like some domesticated animal that was no part of him at all. And each morning he would wake with it again in the cupboard of his rib cage, having become a little heavier, a little weaker, but still pumping. And by the mid-afternoon he was again overcome with the desire to be somewhere else, someone else, someone else, somewhere else. I think human consciousness is a tragic misstep in evolution. We became too self-aware. Nature created an aspect of nature separate from itself. We are creatures that should not exist by natural law. We are things that labor under the illusion of having a self, an accretion of sensory, experience and feeling, programmed with total assurance that we are each somebody, when in fact everybody is nobody. Maybe the honorable thing for our species to do is deny our programming, stop reproducing, walk hand in hand into extinction, one last midnight, brothers and sisters opting out of a raw deal. To realize that all your life you know, all your love, all your hate, all your memory, all your pain, it was all the same thing. It was all the same dream. A dream that you had inside a locked room. A dream about being a person. And like a lot of dreams, there's a monster at the end of it. What are you looking for? There is no truth. There's only action. Action obeying a million different impulses. Ephemeral action. action subjected to every possible and imaginable contingency and contradiction. Life. Life is crime, theft, jealousy, hunger, lies, disgust, stupidity, sickness, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, piles of corpses. What can you do about it, my poor friend? Watch out for intellect. Because it knows so much it knows nothing, and leaves you hanging upside down, mouthing knowledge as your heart falls out of your mouth. You won't take the most important of all the choices that your life is shaped of. You will not decide where you are going. You will take some scars to the grave. You will not get the love you wanted. Suffering would be your eternal companion. You will do things you never imagined. You will blame. You will be discontented about everything around you. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Now, if we have so far convinced ourselves a priori by the most universal considerations, by investigation of the first elementary features of human life, that such a life, by whole tendency and disposition, is not capable of any true bliss or happiness, but is essentially suffering in many forms and a tragic state in every way, we might now awaken in this conviction much more vividly within us, if, by proceeding more a posteriori, we turn to more definite instances, broad pictures to the imagination, and described by examples the unspeakable misery presented by experience and history, wherever we look, and whatever avenue we explore. But perhaps at the end of his life, no man, be he sincere and at the same time in possession of his faculties, will ever wish to go through it again. Rather than this, he will much prefer to choose complete non-existence. The essential purport of the world-famous Hamlet monologue is, in condensed form, that our state of existence is so wretched that non-existence would decidedly be preferable to it. If we were to conduct the most hardened and callous optimist through hospitals, infirmaries, operating theaters, through prisons, torture chambers, and slave hovels, over battlefields and to places of execution, if we were to open him all the dark abodes of misery, where it shuns the gaze of cold curiosity, and finally were to allow him to glance into the dungeon of the Goleno where prisoners starve to death, he too would certainly see in the end what kind of a best of all possible worlds this is. For whence did Dante get the material for his hell, if not from this actual world of ours? And indeed he made a downright hell of it. On the other hand, when he came to the task of describing heaven and its delights, he had an insuperable difficulty before him, just because our world affords absolutely no material for anything of the kind. For the rest, I cannot here withhold the statement that optimism, where it is not merely the thoughtless talk of those who harbor nothing but words under their shallow foreheads, seems to me not merely an absurd, but also a really wicked way of thinking, a bitter mockery of the unspeakable suffering of mankind.